Welcome to today's class. So today we'll see some of the, we will recap the classification of PDE, and then also we'll see some of the well postness and boundary conditions and simple problems we'll try to see. So let's see what's there. Okay, so let's see the classification of PDE, the recap. So we have seen this definition of PDE, the formal definition of PDE. So if omega is subset of R power n and m belongs to n, and f is a mapping from omega cross R power n p cross R power n square p cross R power n m power p to RQ, then the system of differential equation is given by this equation number 1. So here some mth order derivative of the function u appears in the system of equations. Okay. So then we have we just make omega subset of R power n and m belongs to n. Now we just change the u as a single variable. So earlier u is a u belongs to R power q. Here u belongs to u is a mapping from omega to R. Okay. So earlier it is omega u is a mapping from R power omega to R power q. Okay, so here it is different. So now what will happen? So the partial differential equation of the order m is defined by this equation. So equation number 2, so which is called the mth order derivative, which we have already seen. Then we have already classified that as system, and depending on system and order. Like if you have more than one variable, more than one equation, then it is called system of PDEs. Otherwise, it is called a single PDE or a scalar PDE or simply PDE. So definition, another one, like another classification is that the mth order PDEs. So suppose you have the highest derivatives of order m, then we say that it is a mth order PDE. Then also we have defined what is linear and non-linear. So linear and non-linear we define like this, like we just rewrite the equation 2 as L is equal to F. If L is a linear operator, then we say that it is a linear PDE. Okay. Otherwise, we say it is a non-linear PDE. Okay, so these are all two things. So now next one. So if it is a linear PDE, what you can write is that you can write that equation in this form. So you can write that as summation a alpha x into u d alpha u, okay, equal to sum f of x. You can write it. Okay, then this is called a linear PDE. If you can't write, so this a alpha should be a function of the independent variable only. Okay, there should not be any dependent variable or any of its derivatives should appear there. So then it is called, then we say that it is a linear PDE. Okay. Next one, the equation of equation 2 of order m is called quasi-linear. If it is linear in the if it is linear in the derivatives of order m, means the highest derivative should have a coefficients depending on the independent variable x, and it can have dependent variables, like it can have something like u can be there, d1 u can be there, okay, etc. d alpha or dm u can be there, dm minus 1 u can be there. So this is called in that case. Okay, so in that case only at the highest derivative it should be there. So alpha equal to m, it should be there. Then we say that it is a quasi-linear PDE. Okay. Otherwise, we say that it is a fully non-linear PDE. Okay. If it is not quasi-linear PDE, or if the mth order PDE is fully non-linear, if it is non-linear in the derivatives of the order m, okay, that is called fully non-linear. Then next one, we have semi-linear. So when do we say it is a semi-linear? So a quasi-linear PDE, again we call it as a semi-linear PDE, if the coefficients of the highest derivative is a function of x alone. Okay, only the coefficient of highest derivative should be a function of x alone. The remaining can be a function of u, ux, or du, d minus m1, u, etc. can be there. Then we say that it is a semi-linear PDE. Again, so the semi-linear PDE, we can call it as some classes we can call it as almost linear. Means like all the coefficient which is involving for d alpha u should be a function of x alone, whereas the remaining thing can be a function of can be non-linear. For example, if you take ut plus ux plus u square equal to 0, so in this case this is linear with respect to ut, this is linear with respect to u, but this is not linear with respect to u square. Therefore, this is called non-linear sorry, almost linear. Okay, so in this case, it is called almost linear. Similarly, if you take xux plus yuy equal to u, this is once again called as almost linear. Okay, suppose, okay, next one is next classification is homogeneous or inhomogeneous PDE, or some people call it as non-homogeneous PDE also. So if you write that equation number 2 as du is equal to fx, okay, this f is identically 0. If the f is identically 0 in this equation, then we say that it is a homogeneous PDE. If f is not equal to 0 for some of the values, then we say it is a inhomogeneous PDE or non-homogeneous PDE. For example, if you see ut plus ux equal to 0, it is a homogeneous PDE because right hand side is 0. Similarly, if you write 2uy minus 5u cube equal to x, it is a inhomogeneous PDE because right hand side you have some function of x. Same way, third equation, it is a inhomogeneous PDE because if f is not equal to 0. So in some textbook they call it as inhomogeneous PDE as non-homogeneous PDE also. Let's see some and second order PDE will complete that, then we'll come to that example again. Okay, so the general first order PDE, okay, the general first order PDE in two variable can be written in the following form. Okay, so the general first order PDE can be written in the following form. So how do we write the general first order PDE? Can be written in this following form. It can be written as f of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy equal to 0. Okay, if you can write that equation in this form, this is called first order linear PDE. Now, when do you say it is a first linear PDE? If you can write this equation, the same equation, if you can write in this way, a x comma y comma ux plus b x comma y comma uy plus c x comma y comma u equal to f of x comma y. If you can write this form, then this is called linear PDE, first order linear PDE. Okay, this is called linear PDE, first order linear PDE. Now, semi-linear PDE. When do you say it is semi-linear PDE? So if you can write the same thing as a of x comma y comma ux plus b of x comma y comma uy equal to f of x comma y comma u or some c of x comma y comma u. Okay, as it is given that. So c of x comma y comma u. So here it should be linear with respect to these two terms. Okay, so this is linear, this is linear. It is independent of u or ux. It is independent of u or uy. So this is a semi-linear PDE. Now for quasi-linear PDE, we have one more thing. So a of x comma y comma u comma okay ux plus b of x comma y comma u comma uy u into uy equal to c of x comma y comma like this way, c of x comma y comma u. Okay, so if you can write this way, then we say that this is a quasi-linear PDE. Okay, this is quasi-linear PDE. Okay, now if you come to the second order PDE, so for second order PDE, how do we write? The same thing. Okay, the same thing we are going to write, but we are going to write it in different way. So what we write? We write it as f of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy comma u xx comma u xy comma u yy. So here I assume that u xy equal to uyx. So you should have some conditions for that. Okay, I just leave it as an exercise. Just see what is the condition. Uxy is equal to uyx should be there. Okay, so I'm just treating both of the things same. So I'm just using uxy plus uxx uxy uy. Okay. Now, when do you say this is when do you say this linear PDE is linear PDE? So if you can write this PDE in this form, a1 okay uxx plus a22 a1 okay, so here a2 xy u xy, let me put. Okay, then I'm just going to write the next one as, so I'm going to write that next one as, so here it is u xy, the next one is a3 x comma y u yy plus a4 x comma y ux plus a5 x comma y u y plus a6 x comma y u equal to some f of x comma y. Okay, then we say that it is a linear PDE. So when do you say it is a semi-linear PDE? So we can write this as x comma y comma uxx. Okay, so a1 x comma y comma uxx, a2 x comma y comma uxy. Okay, plus a3 x comma y comma uyy equal to some c of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy. Okay, or f of as it is written there f, so you can put f or c, it is not a problem. So in that case it is called semi-linear PDE. What do you say it is a quasi-linear PDE? The same thing. Okay, so what you can write here is that, so you just replace this one with as follows. So a of x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy comma uy into uxx. Okay, this is a1 plus a2 into x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy into uxy plus a3 into x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy into uyy equal to c times x comma y comma u comma ux comma uy. Then we say that this is a quasi-linear PDE. Okay, fine. Now let's come back to that example. Okay, let's see this example. So what is this example saying? So let's see. Let's just write only the equations, which is saying like first we will complete equation number 1. Example that first line, and then okay, let's complete the second one. So uxx plus uyy equal to 0. So what is the order? Order is second order because uxx and uy is there, so order is 2. Is it linear PDE? Yes, it is linear PDE. What is a1xy? a1xy is 1, a2xy is 0, a3xy is 1, a4 is 0, a5 is 0, a6 is 0, f is 0. Okay, that is, it is a second order linear PDE. Is it almost linear? Yes, it is almost linear also, because what we require is that in this case we need f of x comma y comma u we require. So that term is 0 here, therefore it is almost linear also. Okay, so there is a mistake there, so this should be almost linear. Okay, I'll just correct that and send that PDF. Then is it semi-linear PDE? Yes, it is semi-linear PDE, because what is a1xy? It is a1xy is 1, a2xy is 0, a3xy is 1. Therefore, it is a semi-linear PDE. And c of x comma y comma u comma x is 0. So it is a semi-linear PDE. Is it quasi-linear PDE? Yes, it is quasi-linear PDE. What is ax comma y comma u comma ux comma y? It is 1. This is 0, and this is 1. Therefore, it is a quasi-linear PDE also. Is it homogeneous? Yes, it is homogeneous because right hand side is 0. Is it fully nonlinear? No, it is not fully nonlinear because it is already quasi-linear. If it is a fully nonlinear, it should be a not quasi-linear should be there. Since quasi-linear is satisfied, fully nonlinear will not be there. Now, what is the first one? So first one, what do we need for first one? We'll just go back here. Okay, we'll just go back here. So if it is, we'll just finish the first one. Okay, the first one. So in that case, what do we require? We require the following. Okay, we require again the following. We require the following. Okay. So that if it is a linear PDE, it should be ax comma y comma ux plus bx comma y comma uy equal to c of x comma plus c of x comma y into u equal to f of x comma y. Okay, it is linear. Okay, semi-linear, a of x comma y comma ux plus b of x comma y into uy equal to c of x comma y comma u. Quasi-linear, a of x comma y comma u into ux plus b of x comma y comma u into uy equal to c of x comma y comma u. Okay, so this is the quasi-linear. Now, if you come back again, so ut plus ux plus u square equal to 0. Is it, what is the order? Order is 1. Okay, order of the PDE, order of the linear PDE is 1. Is it a linear PDE? No, it is not linear PDE, because if it is a linear PDE, this would be the coefficient of u should be C of x comma y comma u. So a of x comma y comma a of x comma y is 1, b of x comma y is 1, whereas C of x comma y is not 1, it is going to be u. Okay, because here there is a non-linear term is there, therefore it is not a linear PDE. Okay. Is it almost linear? Yes, it is almost linear. For almost linear, what we require, this would be linear, this would be linear. In this term, it can be a non-linear PDE. F of x comma u can be there. Okay, that is called non-linear, almost linear. Okay, so almost linear can be there. Okay. Okay, is it a semi-linear PDE? Yes, it is semi-linear PDE, because a of x comma y is 1, b of x comma y is 1, c of x comma y comma u is nothing but u square. Okay, therefore it is a semi-linear PDE also. Okay, is it a quasi-linear PDE? Yes, it is quasi-linear PDE. A of x comma y comma u is 1, b of x comma y comma u is 1, and c of x comma y comma u is u square. So it is quasi-linear PDE. Is it homogeneous? Since right hand side is 0, it is homogeneous. Is it fully non-linear? No, it is not fully non-linear, because it is already quasi-linear PDE. And third one, ux square plus uy square equal to x square plus y square. Is it what is the order? Order is 1, because ux is the highest derivative. Now, is it linear PDE? No, because here ux would be there, uy should be there, but there it is ux square plus uy square is there, so it is not linear PDE. Is it almost linear? No, it is not, because already ux square plus uy square is there. Semi-linear also will not satisfy, because here it should be ax comma y into x, so ax comma y is not a function of x alone, so it is not a semi-linear also. Same way, it is not a quasi-linear also, because it should have only ax comma y comma u should be there, it is not that, therefore it is not quasi-linear also. Is it homogeneous? No, it is not, because right hand side is having x square plus y square, so it is not homogeneous PDE, it is not inhomogeneous PDE. Is it fully non-linear? Yes, it is fully non-linear, because it is not quasi-linear. The third, fourth one, ux plus 5u equal to x square y. Is it a what is the order? Order is 1, okay, because the highest derivative is ux. Linear PDE, yes, it is linear PDE, because a is 1 here, and b is 0 here, c is 5 here. Okay, so it is a linear PDE. Is it almost linear? Yes, it is almost linear, because all these conditions are satisfied. Is it semi-linear PDE? Yes, it is semi-linear PDE, because again a is 1, b is 0, and c is nothing but 5u minus x square y minus 5. Okay, quasi-linear PDE, again yes, it is here satisfied, and c of x comma y is again the same like that. Homogeneous? No, because right hand side is x square y. Fully non-linear? Yes, it is fully non-linear. Sorry, it is not fully non-linear, because it is already quasi-linear, so it is not fully non-linear PDE. Okay. So the classifications, there are some remarks are there. So few authors classify the only the linear PDE as homogeneous and non-homogeneous, and similarly few authors only classify like non-linear PDE as semi-linear PDE or non-semi-linear PDE. For example, you can see the Stanford lecture notes or something. Then they used to classify only non-semi-linear PDE as semi-linear and non-semi-linear PDE. And again, they classify only non-semi-linear PDE as quasi-linear or non-quasi-linear PDE. So these are all some of the things. So other things are like parabolic. If you in the later classes, we'll see like classifications of the second order PDE, like parabolic, hyperbolic, and elliptic. And the same way we can extend that for higher order PDEs also. One can prove that linear PDE is a proper subset of semi-linear PDE, and semi-linear PDE is a proper subset of quasi-linear PDE, and quasi-linear PDE is a proper subset of PDE. And this inclusion is strict, okay, which you can prove it. And I have given some exercise, so which you can do it. So you can just classify them the same way which I have given the table here. Same table, you can just put it over here. Okay. Now preliminaries for boundary condition and method of characteristic. Okay. So here we are going to introduce Paddy's vector differential operators. Directional derivative first. Okay. So what is the directional derivative? See, you have seen the partial derivative. In partial derivative, what we have? So we have a partial derivative. What is the definition for partial derivative we have? So if you have dou f by dou x, okay. So if you have dou f by dou x, what is the definition we have seen that is? So for example, at a comma b, okay, what is the definition we have seen is that, so we just fix the value at y, okay, with respect to x we are going to do. So what we have written is limit h tends to 0, okay, f of x plus a plus h, okay, f of a plus h, comma b minus f of a comma b divided by h tends to 0. Sorry, divided by h. H tends to 0. Okay, so this is the partial derivative definition P of C. Okay, now so if we have something like dou f by dou y, once again similar way we can say, okay, at a comma b. Okay, so what we do, limit, so here we have seen limit k tends to 0, f of a comma b plus k minus f of a comma b divided by h. Okay, so then we say that this is a partial derivative. Here what we are doing is that, see, for finding the partial derivative with respect to x, I'm just keeping b as constant. Okay, I'm just keeping b as constant. Whereas for finding partial derivative with respect to y, I'm just keeping y as a as x variable as constant. Okay, x variable is constant. Now, is in this case, in the case of directional derivative, we are going, we just allow, we don't keep anything as constant. Okay, here we keep x as constant, here we keep y, as constant, here we keep x as constant. Whereas in directional derivative, what we are trying to do is we are just trying to allow both x and y simultaneously grow or simultaneously decrease, or one grows faster, one grows slower, etc. So what we do is we take a function. Okay, f is a function in R defined in our domain omega subset of R square, and let's take some point. Okay, so f is so there is a domain. So this is omega. So in this, I'm just taking a point. Let's say x naught comma y naught. Okay, x naught comma y naught is there. So this is a subset of R square. Now what I'm going to define is that I'm going to define the directional derivative of, so f is a function. Okay, f is a function from omega. Okay, to f is a function defined on omega subset of R square. Okay, to R. Okay, so how do we define the directional derivative here? Okay, directional derivative, how do we define? So here what we define is that dv of, okay, dv, so for this we need a vector. Okay, that vector I'm just calling it as ai plus bj, ai plus bj. Now with respect to that vector I'm going to define, okay, direction in the direction of the unit vector. This is a unit vector. I got to take this as a unit vector. In this unit vector direction, I'm going to take what is the directional derivative. So dv, I just denote as dv of f. Okay, at, I'm just going to define at dv of f at x naught comma y naught. Okay, I'm just taking x naught comma y naught. How am I defining? I'm just going to define that limit. Okay, limit h tends to 0, limit h tends to 0, f of, okay, x naught plus ha plus y naught plus bh minus f of x naught comma y naught divided by h. So this is called directional derivative. Okay, so here dv denotes the directional derivative in the direction of v. Okay, so according to ruling, so this I have defined for two-dimensional case. So you just see the difference. Here I'm just keeping b as constant. Here I'm keeping a as constant. Whereas here what I'm doing, I'm just allowing both the things to grow or shrink together. Okay, at the same time it is moving. Okay, it's at the same time the growth or degrees or the direction is changing. Okay, the direction of the value, I mean the increment is happening simultaneously in both variables. Okay, in both variables it is going to be changing. Okay, the question is, when do we say the directional derivative is same as partial derivative? See, for example, if I just make like this b vector is 0, let's say like v is equal to I vector, then what will happen? This is almost similar to what we have here. Okay, this will become like f of x naught plus h, okay, y naught minus f of x naught by y naught by h. Similarly, if I just allow v is equal to j vector, again you will get this derivative. Okay, so this is the simple thing. Now I hope you studied in your analysis course the other directional derivative definition also, which is like a generalized one. So here we have defined for two-dimensional, so we can generalize that for n-dimensional also. So suppose you have a vector v, okay, then we can write it as summation vi into ei. The ei is nothing but the where A is nothing but the standard basis vector. So that standard basis vector we have. Then what we can define the dv of f. Okay, dv of f at x, what we can define is that summation I equal to 1 to n, okay, dou f by dou, so the same way dou f I of x into, so we have BA. Okay, so this is called the directional derivative for the n dimensional vector. Okay, okay, now next one. Okay, next one. So this one we can write it as a another notation. We'll see that. Before that we need to introduce some notation called gradient. So what is gradient? So the gradient is nothing but, we define that, okay, del is nothing but the gradient, so which we define like this, summation I equal to 1 to n dou by dou xi into ei. Okay, so then this is called gradient. This is called the gradient. So if I have a gradient of a function, how do we define? So gradient of a function is defined as del f equal to summation I equal to 1 to n dou f by dou xi into ei. So this is called the gradient. Okay, the gradient of the function. Okay, fine. So here, what is f? F is a function from r power n to r. Okay, so this is called gradient. In two-dimensional case, what it will happen? So this will become like del f is equal to dou f by dou x into I plus dou f by dou y into j vector. Okay, this is called the gradient of a vector. Now, if we replace this one, so we just try to replace this one. So del f is a vector, right? So it is a vector. A is there, so it is a vector. V is another vector. Now, if you just combine these two, okay, so if you just observe these three things, what we can write is that we can write dv of f as v dot del f or del f dot v. Okay, because dot product is commutative, you can write del f dot v or v dot del f. Means gradient into gradient f into v. Similarly, for two-dimensional case, you can write dvf as, so this one I can write it as, so dvf in the two-dimensional case will become like, dvf in the two-dimensional case will become like dou f by dou x, okay, dou f by dou x into, so you can see that dou f by dou x into, suppose v is equal to a comma b, okay, means ai plus bj. Then we can write it as dou f by dou x into a plus dou f by dou y into b. Okay, so this is the one. So the other observation is that the gradient of a function at a point is a vector that points in the direction in which the function increase most rapidly. Okay, so that is the gradient of a function. Okay, divergence. So what is divergence? So you have a vector here. Okay, you have a vector here. This is a vector, del is a vector, v is a vector. Okay, so now what you can do is these two vectors also you can take an inner product. Okay, so I can take an inner product of that. So that is called the gradient divergence of the vector. Okay, divergence of a vector field is nothing but a flux per unit time. How much flux is there per unit time? That is nothing but the divergence of a vector. So that you can write it as del dot v, which is nothing but dou vi by dou x, summation dou vi by dou x, where v is a function from r power n to r power n. Similarly, for 3D, if v equal to v1, v2, v3, then you can define in this way: del dot v is equal to dou v1 by dou x plus dou v2 by dou y plus dou v3 by dou z. Okay. Now again, so del is a vector, okay, and del f is also a vector. Can we define something called, so these two are again vectors. So we have defined the divergence right now. Now, can we take the same thing here? Okay, so divergence of the gradient of, okay, divergence of gradient of f. What will happen? So we are going to take del dot del f. Okay, del dot del f is going to be, this is a vector, this is a vector. So I'm going to apply on that. So what I'm going to get is dou square f by dou xi square. Okay, summation. So this is called the Laplacian operator. So this they write it as delta. Okay, this is called the Laplacian operator, or they used to write it as del square f also. Okay, so this is called Laplacian operator. These are some of the basic things which you need to remember, because these are all the things, notations will be repeatedly using in our problems. Okay, now let's come to the boundary condition. See how some kind problem is there. Suppose I have a problem f of x comma y comma d du comma d square u comma etc. dm comma u is there. So this is the partial differential equation which we have given. Now the question is, can we solve that problem easily? No, because you need some conditions like existence, uniqueness, etc. is coming to the picture. So you need some conditions so that you will get some kind of uniqueness solutions will be there. At least you can expect some. In some problems you can expect that. So now we are going to, so for example, you have some problem, okay, f of x comma, let's say like this x can be written as x comma t comma. So this is r1, this is one more variable is there. Then u comma du comma etc. dm u is there, okay, mth order differential equation which has x and t as variable, okay. So x is r power n1 and this is r, okay. Let's say like this is r plus, means only positive real numbers. So in this case, what we have is that we can just say if you can give a condition, okay. So you give some conditions. So you have a domain. So you have a domain, okay. This is omega subset of r power n, okay. Now this domain is going to move after some times, okay. So when the time is changing, you are going to move that. So in that sense, what will happen is this omega will be either deforming or it will just move, okay. Either it will be deforming or it will be moving. So this is omega naught, I will say, and after some time it will be like omega t. Now what is that at omega naught? What I can say is, what is the value of this u, okay. What is the value of, what is our aim? Our aim is to solve this equation and then find what is our u in terms of, for example, u of x comma t we want to find, okay. So when omega naught is subset of r power n, so after sometimes the omega t will be like, so it will be moving or it will be deforming, etc. So this is going to change. Now what is our solution? Aim is that we are trying to find what is our u of x comma t once the partial differential equation is given. Now at time t equal to 0, suppose you know that exact solution is given, okay. U of x comma t naught is, or u of x comma 0 is given, okay. U of x comma t naught equal to some f of x or some, okay, like this, okay. So then what we say is that, so this one we just so in that case, so this here maybe the t naught will be fixed, so that will be like a constant will be there. So in that case, what will happen is that, so this we call it as a initial condition. So if that initial condition is given, then we say that the problem is an initial value problem. Okay, that problem we say that initial value problem. Okay. Now, okay. Now, if we come to the other way, okay. So suppose you have a, so this is boundary value problem. There is a mistake typo here, not initial value problem. It should be a boundary value problem. So in the boundary value problem, what we have is you have a similar kind of things. Okay, you have an equation, you have a partial differential equation, and you have a domain. Okay, omega is a domain subset of r square or r power n. What you call it as, okay. So this omega is a subset of r power n. Let's say, for example, if you take a two-dimensional case, let's say this is a rectangle, this is called to be a domain. Okay, omega is this one. Okay, omega is this one. Here, omega is this one. Then the boundary of this domain we call it as dou omega. Okay, similarly here, dou omega. If you take a circle, if you take a disk, the disk is a domain. Whereas if you just take only that circle, that is called the dou omega. Okay, the boundary of the domain. So in that case, if in that now what we will have is, so for this partial differential equation, I can say this partial differential equation is satisfied inside the omega. Okay, on the boundary of the domain, I can impose some condition. Okay, if I just put some conditions on the boundary, then we say that it is a boundary value problem, or in short, we say it is a PVP. Okay, so that is the boundary value problem. So it should be a boundary value problem, not initial value problem. I'll just correct it and then send it to you as a PDF. So for example, you take this one, uxx plus uyy equal to 0. Okay, uxx plus uyy equal to 0 and the omega. Okay, and then you just specify u of x comma y equal to some pi of x comma y on dou omega. Okay, for example, on the boundary, I can just specify what is this. Then we say that it's a boundary value problem. According to the boundary condition, we can classify as three different things. So mostly, like classically, they will have three different types of boundary conditions. So what are those things? One is called Dirichlet. Okay, one is called Dirichlet. Another is called Neumann, and one more is called Robin. Okay, so in Dirichlet boundary condition, what we have is that, we try to specify what is the exact solution, okay, what is the exact value at the boundary, okay, at boundary we specify what is the exact value. That is called the Dirichlet boundary condition, okay. Or we say that the solution known at the boundary of the domain, okay, or we specify the values, prescribe the value at each point on the boundary of the omega, then we say that it is a Dirichlet boundary condition, okay. So this should be specified for all t greater than or equal to 0. Or if t is not involved, then you can specify for each of these four. For example, this is a Dirichlet boundary condition. For example, you see that example 7. So exx plus vyy equal to 0. So if I just specify this one, this is a Dirichlet boundary condition. So this is also called as fixed boundary condition because I'm just fixing some boundary condition. For example, if you take a wave equation, okay, in wave equation, or take a guitar or violin, so where what will have is you will have two strings, okay, two strings. The string will be there that will be attached to two pulleys. So these two places I just call it as like a boundary. Okay, these two boundaries are fixed. So just make some disturbance over here or vibrate over here. So this is going to oscillate, whereas these two are fixed. Okay, so that's why this we will be applying this kind of boundary condition. That is the reason it is called fixed boundary condition. And also it is called essential boundary condition because in the finite element method you can see that these kind of boundary conditions will be imposed. So that is the reason it is called essential boundary conditions also. Okay, next one is Neumann boundary condition. So in the Neumann boundary condition, what we need to understand is that we need to understand one more thing. So we just define something called outward normal. For example, if you have omega here, then I can define outward normal. Okay, n I can define like this. Okay, for each places I can define. So this is called outward normal. For example, here for the top I define this one as the normal. Okay, and here I define this one as normal for right side, and this is for bottom. Okay, and this is for left side. So you don't define this side. So that is inward normal. We define outward normal. So that outward normal is defined. Now what I'm going to define is that I'm just trying to impose some condition on the normal derivative. Okay, the normal derivative, if I'm just defining at the outward at the boundary of the domain, then we say that it is a Neumann boundary condition. So those conditions you can write it as dou u by dou n. Remember that here there is a vector. Okay, n is a vector. Dou u by dou n. Okay, so that is defined as n dot del u. That I can define some g, okay, then that is called, or given here f of x comma f of x, then I can say like where x belongs to dou omega, that we call it as a Neumann boundary condition. Okay, the dou e by dou n equal to g or n dot l equal to g is called the Neumann boundary condition. For example, ux plus uy equal to 0, where I have given dou e by dou n equal to some psi of x comma y, where x comma y belongs to dou omega, is called Neumann boundary condition. This is once again called natural boundary condition, because this is applied in finite element method, which when you do the weak formulation, etc., it will naturally occur once you are using the divergence theorem, cost divergence theorem, or etc. So that is the reason it is called natural boundary condition, because it is naturally occurring in that finite element formulation. That's the reason it is natural boundary condition. Also, it is called as boundary conditions of the second kind. Dirichlet boundary condition is called boundary conditions of the first kind. Now, Rabin boundary condition. In Rabin boundary condition, so Dirichlet boundary condition, remember that you have x equal to omega. Okay, the Neumann boundary condition, you have dou e by dou n equal to some g. Okay, u of x equal to some f on dou omega. Okay, this is called Dirichlet. This is called Neumann boundary condition. In Rabin boundary condition, we are just taking a linear combination of this one. So I can just define alpha into dou e by dou n. Okay, alpha is a scalar, plus beta into u equal to some g and dou omega. Then this is called Rabin boundary condition. It's a linear combination of Dirichlet and Neumann boundary condition. That is called Rabin boundary condition. This is also called impedance and convective boundary conditions in electrical engineering and other equations, which you can see in the Keith equations, etc. So this is called boundary conditions of the third kind. Okay. Other conditions are also there. Like you can see, like some conditions like mixed boundary condition, where what we do is at one boundary we give the Neumann boundary condition, at another place we give the Dirichlet boundary condition, and similarly there is a periodic boundary condition, because sometimes it will occur again and again like that, and we have some inlet outlet. There are many other conditions also there, but we just focus only these three conditions. Okay. Next one is well-posedness and solution method. So what is well-posedness? So well-posedness and solution method we see. So we just categorize the study into two things. One is theory, another is application. In the theoretical study, what we study is that we first study whether at least one solution is exist. That is called existence of solution. We want to study whether at least one solution is exist or not. Second one, okay, we just see whether uniqueness, whether the solution is going to be unique or not. By imposing some condition, we want to see, that is called uniqueness. Then we want to study the continuous dependence of data. So I have some initial condition and boundary condition we have given. So for that initial and boundary condition, we want to see whether if I change some data in the initial or boundary condition, will it affect the solution u of x comma y? Okay, then we say that this is a continuous dependence of data or stability of the condition. In applications, what we have is we study the following. So we just construct solution, we just find like what is the solution construction method, and we see like what is the smoothness of the solution. So the smoothness of the solution we have already seen. What is the CM of omega or C infinity of omega? Okay, so those, okay, we will see the CM of omega or C infinity of omega according to the order. We'll see it soon. And then that again we see like regularity conditions, etc. That we will see it in the application oriented. Also, most of the cases we can't find the exact solution. So in that case, we'll go for the numerical method. So that we call it as approximate solution. Okay. What is well-posedness in the sense of Kadamard? I hope you have studied this in the ODE course also, but we'll see that again. Okay. So a problem is said to be well-posed in the Kadamard sense if it satisfies the following three conditions. One is existence. At least some solution should exist. Okay. The solution must exist. Second one is uniqueness. The solution should be unique. Third one is continuous dependence of data, that is stability. The solution should depend on the continuously on the initial and boundary data. Then we call it as it is stability. So if one of the conditions does not hold in this one, we call it as a we call that as a ill-posed problem. Okay, in that case we call it as a ill-posed problem. Okay. Now once the problem is given like this, okay, the problem is given like this. What we need to find is we need to find u of x comma y. Okay, sorry, u of x. We want to find what is u of x or u of x comma t, whatever you call it as, depending on the problem. So we want to find what is u of x. Okay. So suppose this is my problem given. Okay, u of x is f of x comma u comma dq, etc. is given. What I need to find is I need to find what is my ux. Okay, I need to find what is my ux. So if you can find ux which is satisfying this problem, okay, this PDE, then we say that partial derivative, all the partial derivatives are appearing and that satisfies identically on that omega, then we said it is a solution of the PDE. Now the question is whether the solution is going to be analytic or not. Okay, so I hope you know what is analytic, so I'm just skipping that. And again, I am just expecting something like u belongs to C infinity of omega. So what is C infinity of omega? I hope you will remember. So C infinity of omega is that function should be infinitely differentiable and should be continuous. Okay, that is C infinity of omega. So we wish that, okay, we expect that this should be there. If it is there, I'm very happy. Okay, but we are expecting too much. Okay, we are expecting very too much of that because for this problem, I'm expecting an infinitely differentiable function. But we can relax something. Okay, I don't want something like infinitely differentiable. At least my function should be if the PDE is of mth order, at least I expect that PDE is at least I require the solution to be of the order mth order, so that all this derivative will exist. U, du, d square, u, etc. dmu will be existing, and this is going to be satisfied. So in that case, it is better to expect a solution of mth order PDE. So in that case, we can say that the smoothness is of mth order or something. Okay. So we call such solution as smooth. We call such solution, okay, with this much smoothness, okay, that up to that mth degree, mth order derivative exists continuous Cm omega. Then we call it as a classical solution. Okay, if that u belongs to Cm of omega for this mth order PDE, then we call that solution as the classical solution. Okay, classical solution of the PDE. But the question is, can we always obtain a classical solution? The answer is no. You can't expect always the classical solution. So what you can expect is that you can expect what you can expect is that it will not be satisfying all the time, because if you have some kind of problem where you have where you can see some kind of conservation loss, or let's say the Burger's equation, in that case what will happen is that they are ready to allow some kind of discontinuity on the initial condition itself. Okay, then what we need to do is this PDE is to transform the discontinuity along the later time also. So for example, I have a initial condition like this. Okay, I have an initial condition like this. This is having some kind of, you can see that this piecewise continuous, so you can see some kind of differentiability will be coming there. So like some discontinuity also you can take it. So in that case, what do I need is, this is, let's say t equal to 0. At t equal to 1, so it should be propagated, so it should propagate something in a similar way. So that is the one which they are expecting in the physical sense, in the conservation laws, etc., the underlying physics. So that one we call it as some kind of we say a Sharp wave. A Sharp wave is nothing but a curve of discontinuity of a solution U. So U is a solution of the PDE. For that solution, okay, the curve of discontinuity is occurring. So that we call it a Sharp wave. A Sharp wave is a curve of discontinuity of solution U. Okay, of a solution U. So that we call it a Sharp wave. So this is very important in the conservation laws and other things. They are ready to agree, take the U as not continuously differentiable, or sometimes even they don't require the continuity also. Okay, they are ready to work with the discontinuous functions also. So in that case, what we do is, they do not expect a classical solution. So in that case, obviously, since it is U does not belongs to. So if it is going to satisfy, then U does not belongs to C infinity of omega, or even Cm of omega, or even C of omega also, it won't be that. So even this U may not belongs to C of omega. Okay, so in that case, what do they expect is that they want a this obviously will not satisfy the classical solution. So what we can expect is that that kind of solution we call it as weak solution or generalized solution. Okay, this kind of solution we call it as weak solution or generalized solution. Okay. Okay. Okay, so the last one, let's see like what is the method to solve PDEs. So there are different methods to solve PDEs. So you have a Fourier method. In Fourier method, what we have is, you have separation of variable. Suppose you have a PDE, okay, f of x, comma, for example, you have uxx plus uyy equal to 0. So in Fourier method, what you will assume is that u is equal to some x of x into y of y. Means you can be separated as x in x variable separately, y variable separately, and then you can obtain some solutions. So that is called separation of variable. And from that you can see like some eigenvalues problem we got to solve. Then you will get with some Fourier method. Okay, that method is called Fourier method. Then again Green's function. So we'll develop some Green's function and then we will apply that. So that is Green's function method or fundamental solution to find the radial solution. So these are all kind of Green's function method. Then third one we call energy method. So we apply the variational formulation method, and then from that we try to find what is the solution of that. Then another one is called method of characteristics. So in method of characteristics, what we are going to use is that the directional derivative is there. See the directional derivative, we have that dv f equal to 0, we have c. So the dv f equal to 0 means what we can expect is that, what we are expecting is that or dv of u also dv of f or dv of u equal to 0. What we expect is what we can assume, what we can expect. See dy by dx equal to 0. What is that means? Dy by dx equal to 0 means y is constant over there. Okay, y is constant over there. Now dvf equal to 0 means it is constant in the direction of, okay, in the direction of the vector given, the v vector. In the direction of v vector, the solution is constant. The f is constant in that direction. So now, using this concept, what we are going to get is, we are going to obtain something called method of characteristics that we will see. Then another method is called D'Albert's method is that we will see. Okay, so we'll see it in the next class. Thank you.